What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Live with WSO. I'm Patrick Curtis, CEO and founder of Wall Street Oasis. It is a little bit later than usual, so I apologize if you expect me to come on at 3 Eastern and it's closer to 4. So apologies. Got tied up on some internal meetings, but I'm here. I'll try to put in a good 45 minutes to an hour to answer any and all of your questions. We are live on Insta. We are live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, even Twitter, I think. So as usual, I'll have the comments open here. Hey, Pankaj. Hi. Hello to Ono Diogo. I'm reading over here. My Insta followers, I actually have the ability to see your comments now, where before I wasn't able to. But yeah, so any questions on interviews, career focused stuff, specifically tactics, anything you're having, issues with layoffs, anything like that. I know it's kind of been a tough go of it the last few weeks, especially UBS just announcing layoffs. I think yesterday or the day before. So it's been a little bit of a tough week, another tough week. In terms of the markets themselves, looks like a little bit of weakness, although fingers crossed that inflation keeps trending down so that we don't have the need for such aggressive interest rate hikes going forward. Hi, Mir. Hello, Abhishek. How are you? Would love to answer any questions you guys have. So just in terms of other stuff going on with Wall Street Oasis, we are still not quite ready to make a big announcement coming. I'm gone next week, but the week after I'll be back. We will be ready to make the announcement in terms of kind of this new program we're going to be launching. And we'll be able to show you guys where to kind of get on the, it's not really a new program. It's something we've been doing, but we're basically rebranding it and putting it into, something I think will be really exciting for everybody. So Abhishek asked the question. We'll start off here. I'll share it here on the screen. So those of you that want can follow along. So yes, is it worth to do MBA or Master's in Business Administration without any work experience? I'm of the belief, Abhishek, that the MBA, one of the biggest values of the MBA is actually by allowing you to reset your career. So I think it's kind of a little bit of a waste in terms of that reset value and the value you get from being able to reset your career. If you're going right after undergrad just to stack a master's with your undergrad, this is especially in the US, I think you're kind of missing an opportunity to potentially reset things later when you know more, when you've already experienced some of the real world and working in the real world. So I would suggest, I would probably say it's not worth it, but again, it's depending on the local markets. I think MBA in India is kind of a little bit more of a prerequisite to get some of these entry-level roles. And I know in Europe, especially, master's straight out of undergrad is almost kind of very common. So it's like 3 years undergrad and then 1 or 2 years master's is very common. So, and that kind of leads into like your typical investment banking role. So on the US side, I would say if you could delay the master's, still get some work experience for at least 1 or 2 years first, I would lean in that direction. I'm a little bit biased because that's what I did. I actually didn't go to business school till I was 28. So I think that was good for me because it allowed me to kind of see a few different firms, see investment banking, see private equity. And then it also allowed me to kind of just have a little bit more perspective in general. Let's see, here we go. John Doe asks, thoughts on starting in investment banking in the Big Six Toronto? How about National Bank in Toronto for IB? Hey, John, I'm not too familiar with the deal flow up there in Toronto and specifically starting in IB there. I think there is some good deal flow. It's obviously a much smaller market than like a New York or a London, but I think, my thoughts are get the best experience you can get. And that really usually means at the junior level, not worrying so much about pay, but worrying about deal experience and transaction experience. Because if you can get some deals under your belt, real deals under your belt, you're going to become much more attractive to a lot of banks upstream. So if you have to start a boutique or middle market, or let's say a regional boutique, but you get good deal flow, then you become much more marketable as a candidate for a lateral analyst position at one of the bigger names. So I would say start wherever you can, getting the right type of experience you want to be in long term, even if the name isn't a top brand name. Don't go just for like the big bulge bracket brand name, but then get stuck in middle or back office doing like admin support type functions. If your goal is to be an investment banking front office, go to the smaller name, get the deal experience, and then try to lateral to where you want to go. Hey, John. These streams, your podcast have been super helpful to recruiting. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words, John. I know John Doe's probably not your real name. That's okay to be anonymous. Yeah, speaking of our podcast, maybe Amir, you could throw in a link to our pod. It's just called the Wall Street Oasis Podcast. You can find it on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to your pods. Someone's asking from Insta, can you hook a fellow Patriots fan up with the jobs? A senior from FSU. Hey, Brendan. It depends what kind of job. I mean, I personally, I do have a lot of contacts in the industry, but I would look into, I mean, it depends what you've done, what are your internships specifically, and, what skills do you have? So it's not just about like, I can't just get you a job. No, sorry if that's what you're asking. Even though you're a Patriots fan. Appreciate Ono Diogo. Happy you like the memes. Here we go. Harvard Business School or GSB, Stanford, worth it for tech bros that want to pivot into finance and startups. If you want to pivot into investment banking, for sure, worth it. That's like the easiest path because you're going to get a ton of on-campus recruiting at HBS and GSB. So if you really want to go to banking, that banking route, and you're a tech bro, I think it can be a really nice reset. That's kind of what I mentioned earlier. So for startups, less so. If you're already a tech bro, I don't understand why you'd be pivoting to startups. Aren't you already kind of in a startup type of ecosystem? Or are you saying tech bro, like at one of the mega funds, and you want to go startups like VC type stuff? If you want to go VC type stuff, I would say business school is less of a match there. And you can probably do a lot more damage, or you should try to do a lot more damage, just do like joining all these accelerator programs and getting into that startup ecosystem, rather than going to get an expensive MBA and thinking you're going to suddenly be at a venture fund. Tends to be less how it works. It's much more of a tried and proven channel into banking than it is to like VC or even private equity. Like if you think you're going to be a tech bro, as you call it, and go to HBS and suddenly get a job in private equity, that's not the case. It's super competitive for post MBA seats. So a lot of people make the mistake. I've said this, I don't know how many times, but a lot of people make the mistake of thinking, hey, if I go to a top business school, I have a job in private equity. It doesn't work that way. The private equity funds typically want kids at the top business schools that already have pre-MBA private equity experience. So, and even those struggle, and it's competitive even for the people who do have that experience. So they don't even give much of a look to people without pre-MBA private equity experience. It does happen from time to time if you're really good at networking and you can show the value that you can add, but it's a lot more rare. So Pankaj says, "Hey Patrick, I'm into private equity fund accounting profile from India in Citco LLP. I want to switch into core finance profile. How to start?" If you're more on the accounting side and you want to get into like a core finance profile, do more like the front office and transaction advisory type work, I would try to like internally transfer. I don't know Citco or however you say it very well, but if they have a transaction advisory branch, You could try to internally transfer there to get some more deal type of experience and an advisory type experience on your resume before trying to do a lateral transition to an investment bank. That's probably your best bet. Other than that, it's going to be the tried and true advice of networking, and it's who you know and whatnot. The other option is potentially going back and getting a master's if the on-campus recruiting at wherever you're getting your education actually has channels into the banks or into some of these other core finance profile jobs that you're looking for. This is a good question here from a LinkedIn user. That's another anonymous one here. Do you feel you can learn more about the markets trading from a degree, undergrad or master's, or is experience in networking a better teacher when it comes to trading? So trading is a very, markets trading is super broad term. So I think it really matters what you're talking about here. If you're talking about, I would general answer, quick answer, experience. I think trumps education in most cases here. Simply because like what type of firm you're at and what type of group you're in is going to like determine your learning experience. But like even in education, who's your instructor? What did they work in? Were they in like market making? Were they in like prop trading? Were they in like a quant hedge fund? Were they in a long short fund? Were they more on like the sales side of the sales and trading network, where they're just like, entertaining clients and serving, were they in prime brokerage? There's just so many like sub niches within trading, within markets. If you're talking more like a long short, more like a pure trading role, I think experience trumps almost always trumps undergrad or master's or anything. In terms of teaching, networking isn't really a teacher so much to say as networking will help you kind of map out the different types of trading and the different types of group and what might be a good match for you if you're having good conversations and you're showing genuine interest to the traders to try and figure out what they're doing day to day. That's what networking is really great at. And obviously keeping you informed of when there's a job that's open. So I'd say that's like networking's a better way to get like land interviews, build relationships in the industry and get opportunities to interview. But I'd say for sure experience is probably, you're going to learn a lot faster. Now, the problem with experience, leaning on just experience, is sometimes you get a really niche education on the job if you're like in a very specific group only dealing with a certain type of product, for example. So let's say you're like in CDS, collateralized debt securities, and you're, I don't know, trading. I was never in trading. So like, let's say you're in CDS only and one specific industry group or something like that, it can kind of limit you. So I try to get to a place where you can kind of get, especially if you're early in your career, where you can get exposure to different types of desks. That's why I think some of these rotational programs at some of the larger banks is really helpful for people just starting out in their career. They can see what they're interested in, what they like, that type of thing. Let's see. So, hello, Ufuk. I'm a new follower to Wall Street Oasis here. Welcome, Ufuk. I did not have much time to explore Wall Street. I saw live, want to listen. Can we find a remote job and with who? Because these days I'm trying to find a job from outside my country. So, Ufuk, I would leverage LinkedIn like crazy. I mean, I think there's lots of different, not just LinkedIn, but there's lots of different platforms you can use to find remote work. The other thing you can do is if you can brand, I always tell people to brand themselves, specifically like branding yourself around like a specific skill set. So try to like figure out the brand you want to convey in your resume and everything. If your resume and CV are all over the place, like you've done marketing and then you've done finance and then you've done accounting and then you've done this and you don't have a cohesive story to tell, I think people really underestimate the power of a cohesive story in terms of getting opportunities and getting roles. Like if you say, hey, I'm an expert in this really niche program or software or financial analysis, when that recruiter finds that, like that's their need, you're going to get found more likely if you have it posted on LinkedIn, if you're reaching out to people trying to figure out what types of roles that's best suited for. So I would definitely kind of try to make sure your branding is on point. And we do have over 1,000 mentors in our mentor database where you can do anything from a 30-minute call with them to kind of review your CV or resume, and we have a more kind of formal resume review process as well. Amir will post some of those links in the chat, but that's a good way to kind of make sure your CV and your branding is on point. This is interesting. Thomas asked a question. Hey, Thomas. Let's see here. What do you think are the my face is cut off, but that's okay. What do you think are the fundamental differences in PE exit ops from MBB as opposed to BBB? Where do you think there's a cutoff where MBB places better than other banks per capita, better than European banks, or better than some US BBs, not top 3? What about EU, UK specifically as opposed to yes? Okay, so let's tackle this. There's a couple questions here. The fundamental difference, Thomas, I'll hide this so you can just, it's kind of weird when it's blocking my entire face. So the fundamental difference for McKinsey, so people who don't, MBB stands for McKinsey, Bain, BCG. The fundamental difference in PE exit ops for those is there's just less of them. There are private equity shops that like to pull more from consulting firms. So, but in general, in terms of when you look at like the investment banking bulge bracket and the class size there versus the MBB class sizes there, per capita, you're still getting better access to private equity from an investment banking bulge bracket on average. I'd say it's probably about 3x the looks that you're going to get from MBB, even though MBB is still considered very prestigious, very competitive to get into. So I think in terms of like where it places better, if I had to like draw a line, I'd probably say most of the bulge brackets would maybe the bottom 2, it would be more similar in terms of your odds of breaking into private equity. And then EU, UK, I'm a little bit less knowledgeable. I think they might be more open to consultants as opposed to the US, but I'm a little bit less knowledgeable in terms of like the exact flow. I think they still 80-20 rule, 80% of the PE funds, I still think predominantly pull from the investment banking analyst ranks. And they do that because it's just tried and true. It's not that the kids coming out of MBB are any less intelligent or anything like that. It has nothing to do with that. It's just a proxy they use. The banks are just a proxy they use. They're basically just leveraging the bank's recruiting system that tends to be, screening for people that tend to do the job well. So they think, why go anywhere else? The opposite kind of the other end of that argument could be, hey, well, MBB consultants bring a different level of strategy and they're able to analyze industries better and see the competitive advantages or disadvantages of specific sub niches within there and the companies that within there. And then, the argument's going to be from the private equity partners, like, yeah, but can they do an LBO model? Do they understand like the M&A process? Can they run a diligence process and transactions where like the bankers tend to be a little bit more advanced in those areas, which is not surprising. Yeah. So I don't know if that answered your question. Hopefully that was helpful, but yeah, I think it's still, the difference is just, there's more reps. There's just more places that pull from IB still. So here we go. I'm a junior in high school. Hey, Shreeman. How do I get into Goldman Sachs without going to a top 10 business school? Go to an Ivy League school. So go to an Ivy League school, get top grades, network early. So that means, even as early as like your senior summer, your freshman summer, senior summer means senior high school. Start actually talking to people in the industry, learn more, be curious, and just basically try to make sure that you're on the radar of people and that you're showing an interest. And more importantly, definitely don't show like a myopic, narrow-minded focus on just Goldman Sachs, because it just, what that screams is a little bit of, it shows a little bit of immaturity, no offense. Because like just even saying Goldman Sachs, there's actually, this is really funny. There's a hilarious video that you guys got to check out on the WSO YouTube. Amir, see if you can find it. It's like 10 years old. It's this cartoon of, it's like a cartoon or an animation of this guy going like, I want the Goldman Sachs. And the guy's like, but they pay less. And the guy's like, I want Goldman Sachs. And he just keeps saying Goldman Sachs. The guy keeps trying to convince him like there's other opportunities that are better. So that's, I kind of feel like that, like, being limited to one firm, one bulge bracket is very limiting and kind of a little bit, it's very common that people think, oh, Goldman is one of the top banks and I want to get there. But more importantly, group specific and product specific groups within each bank have their strengths and weaknesses. So sometimes Goldman, there's certain groups that are much, much weaker than like their top groups. And so you might be much better off at like a JP Morgan in this specific group or a Morgan Stanley in this specific group that does a ton more deal flow, and your exit ops could be better. Your pay could be better. Or maybe you want to go to an elite boutique, elite middle market or elite boutique, which could pay you, 50% more or whatnot. So like there's other options out there. People know the name Goldman, so maybe that's really important to you. But I would encourage you to keep an open mind kind of going into college, no matter where you end up, whether it's at a top 10 business school or Ivy League or elsewhere. This is a good question. Do you know how many banks utilize WSO for their in-house training for the summer analysts? Hey, Sky, I do know that number. It's a lot. But yeah, a lot and growing. So yeah, we've been training in-house for several years now. And I think a lot of people are recognizing we have some incredible faculty on staff. The great part about having a massive online community in careers in finance is we have a lot of professionals. We've been around for 16 years. So a lot of the people that started off as interns or college students are now MDs, partners, VPs in banks and private equity funds. So they end up coming to us for, we're able to, number one, just have an incredible filter to find great teaching talent, instructor talent from number one. Number two, they actually have specific industry expertise. So they're able to bring a lot of context into the lessons. And I think the firms are starting to recognize that. And then on top of that, we have just our online courses that pair with that in-house live training is really helpful. But yeah, thanks for the question. But that would be a T10 top 10 school. Well, a lot of the Ivy Leagues aren't considered business schools. So you said top 10 business school. So can you get into Goldman Sachs if you're at a non-target? Sure, but you just have to hustle more. You have to network more. And the good news is you're a junior in high school. If you start early, you could know a lot of people by the time you can get to end of freshman year. What's your thoughts on doing IB for a couple of years and moving into PEVC? I think it's great career move. Go for it. I think private equity and venture investing is very interesting. And I think there's a reason it's a very common exit from investment banking is going to the buy side. I think, my thoughts are I did it. There's a lot of people doing it. I don't blame them. I think the pendulum may have swung a little far in terms of like everyone chasing private equity. And I think it's much harder than people realize in terms of like establishing a career and moving up at a fund. But in terms of the work-life balance on average, and then the type of work you're doing in terms of analyzing businesses, meeting management teams, running diligence processes, I think even though it does get a little bit repetitive in private equity after you've done like 3 or 4 deals, I think it's a little more interesting in my perspective than some like the pitch work you do in banking and stuff. And since you're on the buy side and you're not on the sell side, you're doing more work that's like just matters internally in terms of like analyzing whether it's a good idea to invest in a company rather than it being a presentation where like the formatting and the logos has to be perfect and the commas and the design and all this has to be perfect. So, oh yeah, here's the video on YouTube, the funny Goldman Sachs video. Streamman, this is like required watching for you. Or here it is on YouTube. I don't know if they can click. You're not gonna be able to click on that, but if you go to our the Wall Street Oasis YouTube, it's down there. It's really it's worth a watch. It always makes me chuckle. Here we go. Sorry, I'm a little sick. How do you keep track of your network? Simply, how do you maintain your connections remotely? There's some tools, there's software tools. So we have a networking tracker that we give to anybody who buys an interview course, because the WSO networking course is included there. But it's basically a spreadsheet that has some conditional formatting that allows you to know when you need to like reach out to people. But there's other tools as well, like that you can plug into Gmail. There's one called Right Inbox that I use for my work. And that allows you to kind of create templates, set reminders so that if somebody doesn't respond to you after X number of days, weeks, months, years, the email can pop back up to the top of your inbox so that you can actually remember to follow up, which is more important than you think. Let's see here. Thoughts on full-time recruiting for seniors? Hey, Colton. Thoughts on full-time recruiting for seniors this fall? I'm going to assume you're talking about investment banking. I think it's going to be a bloodbath. I think it's going to be really bad. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. If there's even like the full-time recruiting that's happening, it's going to be for seniors is going to be almost non-existent, at least at the higher ends, because this summer, basically what's going to happen, I suspect, because of the weaker deal flow, we're going to have lower intern offer rates. So there's going to be few. Everyone's going to take whatever offer they're given. So the yield that the banks are going to get is going to be very high. So like say, instead of 80, 90% of the top banks, 80, 90% of the interns being offered a job, it may be closer to 60%, 50, 60% in some cases, maybe 70. But that means there's a lot of kids that already have the internship experience that are now hustling to try and find anything. So that means if you don't have that internship experience, and you find yourself as a senior in the fall trying to break in there, you're just like behind this massive pool of candidates, trying to kind of just show why you didn't have the junior year internship, showing why you're a better fit for the bank, which is a tough sell, which is why I think people need to you need a real honest opinion of chances. And I think a lot of college kids, I know I made this mistake. A lot of people made this mistake. People don't fully appreciate how competitive it is. Like a lot of these firms that the offer rates are like under 1%. So it's harder to get into than Harvard. And then you stack on top of the fact that it's a pool of candidates that's even more competitive in a lot of cases, especially for front office jobs. So I think there's a reason the offer rates are so low. There's a reason that stuff. So in terms of full-time recruiting for seniors this fall, I think one of the most important things is to make sure you're not diluting yourself and you have a very good perspective of where you stack up against other candidates. And that means acknowledging that there's going to be a huge pool of candidates coming out of a top internship that are going to be going downstream to get a full-time offer. That means at the middle market banks, that means at the lower middle market banks that you may look down on, or that Streaming would never be caught dead working at. I'm just picking on you, man. But my point is, there's this perspective of I need to make it to this level at this time. It's a really, really dangerous for all of you guys who are recruiting, especially if you don't have that internship. Your goal should be to graduate with a job that can pay the bills, number one. And then from there, as you learn more, as you become a member of Wall Street Oasis and you learn how to network better and you start reading more about the industry, and you start becoming more knowledgeable, and you start developing your skills with financial modeling training that we offer and all this other stuff, then you can become more dangerous. You can actually start developing relationships. You can start actually getting some interviews. And if you're at a tiny boutique bank, it doesn't matter, as long as you're getting some valuable experience, and as long as you're getting paid something to keep the lights on. So it's a huge mistake, especially from people, especially people at decent schools. They just think things are going to take care of themselves. One of my mentees was at Georgetown, graduate, 3.7 GPA, and he was totally lost. He was working 3 jobs, didn't know what to do. And when I got a hold of him, I was like, what? I was basically telling him, what are you doing? All of his time was spent just working. He was in this bad cycle, working really hard, doing 3 almost minimum wage jobs, just trying to keep the lights on. So he didn't have time to step back. So you don't want to end up in that situation where you have a family and you're just trying to keep the lights on and you don't have time to step back and create a true plan. So he ended up at Fidelity. He's now making over 6 figures, doing great, and he has a plan, and he's executing on the plan. And he's going to, eventually be crushing it. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Thomas James, Thomas Hope says, how does IB view university transfers? I had a bit of a life situation, decided to transfer to second year at a better university from 4th year at my original university. If you're getting to a better university, I don't think anybody cares. You want to be a little bit careful how you show that. It sounds like you were at an original university in your 4th year there, and then you transferred to a second year, like you became a sophomore because you only got credits for some of them. I think that's totally fine. I would you got to be a little careful how you're showing GPA. Just try to get your GPA up at the better uni, and then take advantage of the better name, the better brand name, the better alumni network, and I don't think people are really going to care as much. You may get a little bit of like people wondering what's going on, but if like you're going to graduate from the better uni, that's what your diploma is going to come from. So you're still an alum, you're still considered that. I wouldn't worry about that so much. It's kind of out of your control, right? So you're there and just make the best of what you have. And I don't think it's going to matter much. What's going to matter more is like your GPA. Do you keep it up high at the better uni? And then how well are you getting on the phone and like networking with people and learning about the industry and stuff? I'm glad I made you laugh, man. I'm glad I made you laugh. Hey, good question, Sitij. I don't know if I'm saying your name right. Sorry if I'm butchering it. What would this from YouTube? What would your advice be for someone from a country like India that handles a lot of back office work, network, make their way into the front end role? There's a couple of different ways. One is just education. I know there are banking roles in India at specific firms that there are a little more front office. I think like Alvarez & Marshall, some of the bigger bulge brackets have pretty big offices out there. That's number one. So you'd like want to network with people there. Number two is just like going to Europe, going to London to get a master's, like go to London Business School, LSE, try to break in there so that you can get into the on-campus recruiting pipeline. Let's see. Here we go. AJ says, if investment banking doesn't work for me, what are other options within the banks and outside? You could go transaction advisory services at banks. You could go to valuation shops where you're getting any sort of valuation shop where you're doing like fairness opinions or having to build, doing comps or trust precedent transactions. That's like very very relevant work. You could always go accounting if you have an accounting degree. Try to get into one of the big four. They have a great kind of training program and all that. And then you could internally transfer there. Let's say you get stuck in tax or audit. You could always try to internally transfer to TAS after a year or two if you're a top performer in audit. I've seen that transition several times. What are other options? Management consulting is an option that has some great exit ops as well, although that's just as competitive as banking coming out of undergrad, if not more. McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Oliver Wyman, some smaller places like Parthenon and Strategy and all really tough to get into. But yeah, Colton says, yeah, no worries for the honesty. Interning at a big four, awesome. Yeah, go shoot for that return, man. Shoot for that return offer because it's going to be really tough to think there's going to be very, very, very little trading up at the end of this summer when people are there's gonna be a lot of kids kind of left out to dry that are kind of scrambling that come their senior year. So yeah, try to get that return offer for sure. Let's see here. Hi, I'm a first year, Darsh is saying, I'm a first year student. I have skills in Microsoft valuation analysis from top 20 university. First year uni student, I've done networking, Batman, captain, extracurriculars. Is this enough to get internship, or do I need more? Need to do more? I'm not sure what university you're at, so I don't know what the recruiting pipeline looks like for your university. Are you in London? Are you at LSE? So I don't know. Is your GPA high? That's probably going to be one of the most important things. And then, yeah, getting internships. So the other option, if you can't get an internship freshman year, sophomore year even, you can come to Wall Street Oasis. If you're a decent writer, we have a finance research analyst internship. Amir, why don't you throw a link up there for that? And then I'm going to look at some of my Insta feed because I haven't been answering things there. Oh, there's not that many. Oh wait, yeah, there's a lot. I've totally missed all these. Sorry, everybody on Insta. I'm looking. I know a guy with a finance degree from a top tier school making more as a plumber than most private equity folks. Yeah, man. If you're an entrepreneur, even blue collar, if you build out a business, you can make a lot of money if you do it right and you put time into building that business and scaling it. James asks, who else is on the Wall Street Oasis team? There's a lot of people on the Wall Street Oasis team. James, I'm not sure what that question is getting at. Use the strong Columbia brand name to leverage. Yeah, there's a lot of specific questions. Yeah, you can ask questions here, TMP. Sorry, I missed it. What's your top tip, I think, for networking for someone who's from another country like India? Well, that's a good question. I think you posted that in here, Amir. Sorry, I missed it. My top tip is to try and, like, if you can afford it, try and first build up a big network on LinkedIn where you're getting on phone calls. Work on your accent if you are from India to try and make it less harsh, easier to understand for people who are native English speakers, whether they're from London or the US. Because I think accent, there is going to be a little bit of there's going to be hesitation if it's hard to understand you. So I think I would try to make sure your English is super dialed in terms of being able to understand you. So my top tip would be that just like build out the network early and often. And then once you have enough kind of connections and you've had several conversations, not several, you've had say 10 to 30 conversations with people. If you can make a trip out to one of the bigger financial hubs, see if you can meet with people and start, continuing that relationship and develop your skills along the way while you're doing all of this so that you can kind of keep them updated on your skill development and what you're up to. In the meantime, also make sure you try to have a job and that kind of strengthens those skills. It's a lot of work. This is not easy. See what else we have here. I'm from PK, I think Pakistan. Please let me know if you have any group. Shoot your questions. Someone's asking, does WSO have a scholarship program? If yes, how much is the grant for? We used to have a scholarship program. This is from Sin Nombre. Or Sin Nombre. Oh, I think I get it without name. Yeah, we did have a scholarship program. We've moved to more of like financial aid type thing. So if you do need financial aid, there is something at the bottom of the footer in the footer of Wall Street Oasis says financial aid, or where you can apply there. And then usually within a week, we get back to people saying if there's a grant or not for the courses and stuff, for our online courses. I'm in tax at Big Four. Where roles outside of TAS have you seen people jump to? It's a good question. I'm not that familiar with exit ops from tax, to be honest. Even though one of my best friends is still in tax, he's a manager. It'd be funny if you worked with him. What role outside of TAS have you seen people jump to? I don't know. I'm unfortunately not that well versed, Joshua, in tax exit ops. let's see what else we got here. Here's the internship. You can also find it if you go to wallstreetoasis.com and you hover over the career menu. On the bottom right option is called the WSO Finance Research Analyst Internship. You can link to the application there. I'm at a Russell Group uni in the UK, not LSE, but I've got a first. So it's going to be tough, Adarsh, even with those extracurriculars to land an internship from what I've heard. It's a little bit more structured in the UK. You can still network and whatnot, but it tends to be a little bit more like going through a little more regimented around, like you need to apply around the certain channels, and then a little bit harder to come in through the side door just through networking there, but it can be done. It can be done. So yeah, 3.5 isn't like crazy great. I mean, there's a lot of great inflation here in the US. So like a 3.5, maybe since you got first marks, yeah, it's more impressive than a 3.5. Maybe it's closer to like a 3.7 US. But yeah, I think that's it. Amir, am I missing any other interesting ones?
We have one on IG. I posted it in the chat.
What was it?
What advice do you have for a Canadian?
I see Travis. Am I from Massachusetts? Yeah, I'm from Boston, born and raised in Boston. I was born in Brookline, grew up in Andover, north of the city, went to Williams College, all in Mass. Somebody hire me. Can I ask questions here? Okay, I'm trying to read some of these. Marshall versus Notre Dame versus BU versus Stevens for GS for Goldman Sachs IB roles. Jeez. Well, Umair is asking a very specific question. He's saying, should I go to Marshall versus Notre Dame versus BU versus Stephen for Goldman Sachs IB roles? Well, you're in luck because Wall Street Oasis has an insanely massive resource called the company database, the investment banking investment banking industry reports. If you go to the industry reports and you go to investment banking, maybe I should share my screen here. Maybe I could share my screen so people could see this. Under resources, there's industry reports. Under career resources, and then you go to you could just type in investment banking industry report Wall Street Oasis on Google and you'll find it. There's a tab called University Stats. There you can kind of get a sense of how Notre Dame, Marshall, BU all rank relative very specifically to Goldman Sachs. We have a by firm, by bulge bracket, by all these other banks. There's literally thousands of entries here. So we get a pretty good sense of where specific banks like to recruit from. So if you're making a college decision, it's probably a good thing to review if you have like a couple offers from different schools and you want to go finance. So just looking through this list right now, I'm trying to find, you said Marshall and Notre Dame or BU. So let's look at like Notre Dame versus BU. For Goldman, Notre Dame, I have a 0.8% coming from Notre Dame, which isn't horrible. It's not nothing. And then for BU, I don't see much here. I'm looking. I mean, Brown's at 0.8%, Emory's at 0.5%, just to give you some context. Rice is at 0.5%, Stanford's at 1.1%, Texas A&M is 0.8%. I mean, you got to remember it's not adjusted per capita or per student capita, so it's like Dartmouth, much smaller college at 0.8%. Makes sense. I'm not seeing Boston University here yet, but it's probably here somewhere. Let me do a quick search. Oh, here you are. Yeah, and I'm not seeing much draw from BU there. Notre Dame a little bit. I'd probably say Notre Dame is your best bet. But again, like I mentioned earlier, Amir's going to send that funny, you guys got to go to the Wall Street Races, the Goldman Sachs cartoon. It's from like a decade ago, but it's still hilarious. It's like about this guy who just only wants Goldman Sachs. I wish I could play it here for everybody. I probably can. Well, maybe next time I'll figure out a way to play it here and stream it to you guys. Let's see what else we got. How does AI affect entry-level analyst associate jobs? I keep seeing questions around this because ChatGPT is scary good. It's just going to make you guys do more work with less time and less resources. That's all it's going to do. It's not going to, I don't think it's going to remove jobs anytime in the near future. If anything, investment banking has almost like a limited amount of work. You can always be pitching more, always doing more. It's just going to make the pitches more efficient, make the output and the productivity of the analysts and the associates and the junior team that are doing the deals that much higher. So you'd be surprised. He'd be like, people didn't even have Excel modeling or whatever back in the day. Does that mean the analyst classes have shrunk? No, they've gotten bigger. So even with productivity shooting through the roof, especially on the sell side, client side engagements where you're trying to win business, there's always more work that can be done, and the MDs and the partners are always trying to do that. So, yeah, I think we're gonna call it before I lose my voice. Thanks everybody. Next, I think Amir, we'll try to have to get that cartoon up for everybody. So we get all these people asking, how do I get into the Goldman Sachs? That's it. They kept saying like the Goldman Sachs. Let me see if I can pull it up. Make me laugh. This for all of you. It's one of the funniest. It was one of the funniest things I'd seen in a long time. So,
you want the name of the video?
Yeah, what's it called?
WSO promotional video.
Promotional video?
Yeah.
Oh, the Goldman Sachs one, the cartoon. You know what I'm talking about on the YouTube channel?
The one that it's a minute and a half.
No, not the YouTube channel video. The funny, the hilarious one. Anyways, I'll find it and I'll post it to the chat on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Just so you guys can enjoy that, because I think it'd give everybody a laugh, much needed laugh. But we'll call it for now. Thanks, everybody.